Okay, hello, hello, hello to everybody who is listening and watching us out there. Welcome to Melanin and Moonlight. I am one of your co-hosts, Tyrell Collins.
And I'm the other Vernon Scott. Welcome, everybody. Well, let me start off by apologizing because we've been gone for the last 2 weeks and it is all my fault. So I want to apologize to you all for that. So blame Vernon if you really been enjoying yourself and you're just like, okay, where these mofos at? Like, what's going on? What's going on here? It's my fault. It's my fault. So happy to be back. Happy to be with you, friend.
Look, I've been having people like comment, like DM me, message me. They like, where we at? And I'm just like, well, I got to keep in-house business in-house, but sure we be back soon.
So how you been?
Oh, I've been good, been good. It's summer. We out here dealing with some issues.
Dealing with the heat, which neither one of us like.
Yeah, so and y'all gonna know we gonna be and until the weather changes. Just look forward to having commentary about that every week.
Exactly. Like I know people just like, oh, I hate it when people just be like, I can't wait for this summer. I can't wait for the winter. Okay, we're the people that's going to be like, we can't wait for the winter and get used to it, okay? Because we
Yes,
don't ask for summer. We don't. We know what the summer brings, which is heat, and we don't like that. We're not,
yeah,
no, we prefer the cold weather. We prefer fall because it's a little bit nice outside. We like winter because
hmm
we got blankets. And then
yeah,
we like spring because things get new. It's still a little bit chilly outside, nice walking weather, beautiful scenery, and all this other stuff. And then we have summer. Nobody cares about that. No, no, we're not doing
no,
that.
no, absolutely, we're not doing that.
N- Not at all. Um, but yeah, today we have a very important conversation. We're bringing back Vernon's beef with Tyler Perry, which is not really beef, but we talked about the man before. And here we are talking about him again. But even before then, straw. So
Yeah.
I guess I could start off by saying, for
Well,
those,
well, well. Before
uh-huh.
you do that, I do want to give a disclaimer to everybody that's watching and listening to us. We are in no way here to bash, be just ultra critical of Tyler or anybody for that matter. We always look at work or at least we try to look at it from a objective point of view, and then because Vernon and I are both also creatives as well, we do take on that like creative mantra, kind of as well. So just a little disclaimer out there. This is not an attempt to bash Tyler, to be ultra, like I say, criticizing or whatever. But because of the fact that he has been in the news, and we'll get into that later on in the show. But because of the fact that his new Netflix movie Straw is out, has had mixed reviews, things like that, we figure why not just make it a Tyler Sunday, and just talk about things, Tyler.
Right, right. The plays will forever be phenomenal in my eyes, because they were really good. So I was not going to watch Straw, so everybody knows. I've just the last thing Tyler Perry that I saw was Acrimony, which I know there's a lot of people who did not like it, and for real good reasons why, because plot wise, a lot of things were off. Like stuff was not connecting. And I get that, and I saw it myself. But Taraji P. Henson, she does it for me. She
Yes,
acts
yes,
down. Straw, she
yes.
acted down. Oh my, get into that in a
Mm-hmm.
second. But I had no intentions of watching another Tyler Perry production because I've just been fed up with his foolishness. But knowing that we were going to have this conversation today, I was like, let me go ahead and do it. Let me go ahead and watch it. I still may go back and watch Beauty in Black, but knowing me, I'm probably not going to. 'Cause I want to support T.S. Madison, even though she can be problematic sometimes, but I love her still. But I'm also kind of like, it's Tyler Perry. How good can it be? How bad? Well, it could be. Let's
You
not
know
go too
what? You know what?
bad.
As somebody who recently watched Beauty and Black, and it's like a classic one of those like how we associate Tyler. It's one of those things that it's a train wreck like you can't turn away from.
And I and it's not that
Because
I have a
it's amusing. It's amusing. I
it's
would
not
say.
that I have a problem with trash TV because I do enjoy a like the Chinese dramas are so good. Like my friend
Mhm.
Shane, she got me into watching some of those and I love them so much. They're very good. You just like what is happening here? But you cannot turn away. You're really, really into the story, but it's the story that keeps you there even though everything is so boisterous and just so wild that's going on, but the storytelling is actually pretty amazing. And that's the
Mhm.
thing that gets me when it comes to like most Tyler Perry things is that the story isn't there. It's like we have this event, that event, and it's like you have emotionally triggering incidents
Mhm.
to really draw a person in, but we don't always have a tie-in. We don't have anything that builds us into this person, getting to know them. Like
Mhm.
personally speaking, I don't believe Tyler Perry wrote this. Like from the works that he put out in the past compared to Straw, it does not align, but it does still stick to that black women's pain, which there's always space for black women's pain, but and like in terms of media and helping people understand it, there's space for that. Just for anybody. Like Lifetime is there for like, primary white women and their pains and their struggles and it being inclusive of black women will be great too. But like there is space for that kind of writing, and I want there to be space for that. But the way that Tyler writes it usually does not seem appropriate for the most part.
Mhm.
However, with Straw, I genuinely enjoyed watching the movie. I'm not going to watch it a second time, but the first watch was great. I really enjoyed it. I liked the way the story was like unfolding. Like
Mhm.
even from the beginning, I was like, "Hold up, that's not a science fair project. What are we talking about? Something's off here? Like, what kind of science fair project looks like this? What are we trying to do here?" So, like even from that, I'm like, okay, there's stuff happening here, and I knew the plot twist before going into it, which
Mhm.
knowing that and seeing how they developed it throughout was very well done for me.
Mhm.
Um, but part of me that feels like he didn't do it is just based off of how all of the scenarios and scenes really built on onto each other.
As a
Like
whole.
even when it came to my disdain for Janaya's boss. Because
Mhm.
you can immediately hate this man real quick because you can
Yeah,
identify some.
but there are a lot of Glynn Turmans out there. Well, our Glynn Turman's
Okay,
character, like because we love Glynn Turman, he's a national treasure. But but we know bosses that
exactly.
like
So it's like
yeah, yeah.
easy to dissociate the emotional attachment with him solely because you can place any of your horrible bosses with him. So it's like all of that, and knowing that she's just going through trial after trial after trial, and this is just one of those heavy days, and then
Mhm.
you get to a breaking point. It was I, it was very well done. It's like whoever he either allegedly stole this this film from, or whoever put their toes in that to spice it up for Tyler, kudos to you because it just does not seem like he did that to me.
Mhm.
Directing it, great. But again, Taraji P. Henson outside of this stuff going on with Tyler right now that we'll get into later, deserves an award for what she did with Janaya in this film. I will not take that away from her because even if the script was bad, she made it good. She made it
Mhm.
excellent.
Yeah.
So, and she is known for taking some horrible mess and making it beauty. So,
No, well, of course.
what were some of your thoughts?
Yeah, so I ended up watching it twice because one, just watched it, with my family, but also I watched it again because I knew obviously we were going to talk about it. So there were, some very subtleties that obviously I picked up on the second time that I did not pick up on
Hmm.
the first time, So I will say I agree with you. I think that Straw is undeniably like an ambitious film, right? It's meant to be a character driven tragedy, right? This indictment of the systems that especially crush impoverished Black women, as
Hmm.
we see in that film: housing, healthcare, education, labor, justice, all those types of things. And like you say, one of the highlights of the film is Taraji. Like we say, she acts down.
Hmm.
So watching her elite level of, acting as she goes from despair, rage, confusion, guilt, just all these type things. And then, of course, giving also praise to the other cast members, like we say, Glynn Turman, Sherri Shepherd, Teyana Taylor, all of those people, obviously were very good, but Taraji, she acts down. Now, what I do feel before actually moving into the film, I feel like just to speak about Tyler in general for the nature of his filmmaking, I feel like a lot of times he has great ideas that are very broad concepts. So he's a very good broad concept writer, for me. And again, I'm speaking as just in my opinion, of course, as a fellow creative, as a writer. I think that he's brilliant when it comes to actually like big ideas. The execution of those ideas don't always serve, I think, his creative vision. The reason why I say that is one, it is very well known. Taraji has spoken about it. Everybody has spoken about the fact that this was a film that was filmed in 4 days. So the fact that we got that level of acting out of Taraji in 4 days, in like a 4 day filming, it's like, bam. However, the fact that it is filmed in 4 days is a sort of criticism to what Tyler does. Because you had this very short time window to film, there are a lot of just like plot holes and a lot of structuring of execution that could have actually been different, that could have actually been grounded. But when you have only 4 days, you don't have time to rewrite, to restructure, to do things like that. Because I think about a film that is like, I don't know if you've ever seen like the film Malcolm and Marie with Zendaya and
Hmm.
John David Washington on
Hmm.
Netflix. Malcolm and Marie is a film that was filmed in 2 weeks. However, the the good crux of that entire film is filmed inside the nature of their home.
Is that
And
the
they're,
black and white one?
yeah, that's the black and white one. And they're both like the focal point. But even as emotionally charged as that entire film is, that still took 2 weeks to film.
Hmm.
Where you have a strip set and things like that. So you can tell the fact that this was filmed in 4 days because you only had 3 sets. You had like Jania's home, the neighborhood kind of outside. You had the school, you had the brief hospital, and then you had the bank. And of course we
Hmm.
got to see where she worked. But you worked with very limited set. And then pretty much when, Jania does, obviously have the bank hostage, it the pretty much like the whole rest of the hour and 15 minutes is spent in the bank. So you can tell it operated on a lower budget, which of course, budget, that's subjective. So for me, where the things that faltered for me in the film was, I just felt like one, there was just a lot of overstuffed plot with a very rushed pacing. So as we know,
Hmm.
the first 2/3 of the film, we just pile on trauma at a relentless pace. We have job stress, we got CPS, we got eviction, police brutality, robbery, mental unveiling. Like you say, all these things that are stopping. But instead of actually slowing down and maybe getting maybe two or three of those, right? Getting us into Jania's kind of like internal world, it races through like her suffering. So for me, one of the things was I think that the story needed just room to breathe, like to let audience feel what Janiyah felt, not just watch it. And that's the thing I have about Tyler and a lot of times his writing. A lot of times we're watching things just happen to characters instead of actually getting into what they want. And that's actually really a pattern with a lot of his characters. The only character that I can feel like that just stands out in my mind that he does not do that for, where we actually get what she wants, is like Kathy Bates in The Family That Prays. Because if you're familiar with that film, it's like, okay, Kathy Bates is dying of cancer. And the thing that she wants before she dies is to oust her son from the company. But if we look at a lot of like his black female leads, right? Even from the nature, I would say a little bit of Taraji and Acrimony, right? We know that she is like out for revenge, but like what is like what else is there though? Or if we
Mm.
think about like his early work with Diary of a Mad Black Woman with Helen, like, okay, we have this husband, he treats her like dirt, he throws her out the house, she meets Shamar Moore's character, they get engaged at the end. But
Everybody
we
remembers that man's name.
yeah, but it's kind of like we don't really ever get aspect of like what does Helen want
Mm.
as a character. So the reason why I say that is because even with the nature of Janiyah, where in her perspective, and yes, again, Taraji is acting down, but if the film had had some sort of subtle nuance where we're understanding, okay, because she's in the state that she's in, maybe does she want to, get enough money so she can leave town? Is there something that she fears? We get the mention of her mom, but it's like, okay, is she scared to reconnect back with her mom? So it's kind of like, there is nothing else to her internal view more than just surviving. Now, again, that is a very realistic thing for people when we're living in everyday life, because I'm sure we have all had many days where it's like, damn, can I just get a break?
Mm.
Where you have so many things that are happening. It's like, can I just get a break? So I get that angle. But for me, I think in watching film, it doesn't quite work the same because I have to feel what a character is actually going through, not just watch things, done to them. So that's my thing. I will say also the twist that we have, and again, if you're listening to us right now, if you have not watched the film, pause the video, go watch the film, come back and listen to us because we will be spoiling for the film. So if you haven't, go watch the film, then come back and listen to it. The hallucination twist at the end. So we know we get this big reveal at the end. Mom tells the fact that the daughter has actually been dead. Oh my God. Seeing that for the first time, gut punch. Like, what? Now, we know we actually get several, kind of like subtle clues
Mm.
that that's actually what happened, that was what was actually happening. Um, However, I feel like again, we don't really establish what Janiyah's like psychological state is early on. So like I'll just say for me as a writer, for instance, a scene like I would have tweaked a little bit. In the beginning opening where she's like waking up next to her, where we feel like she's waking up next to her daughter, I feel like instead of having them in the same bed, if they would have had like twin beds and she would have woken up and we would have seen the bed already made, and then like we hear like the water running in the bathroom, and like we just see Taraji staring at the bed. So that way, even from that very scene early on, we're getting the inference like we keep talking about the daughter, but we're not really like seeing her. So automatically we can pick up on the fact that something is wrong. So again, I think it did well for shock value to deliver what we found out at the end. However, it's kind of like, oh, this is shocking. And yeah, I'm shocked as a fan, as a person who's watching, but it doesn't like ground me into like saying
Mm.
like, okay, when I think back of how Sinbad makes that comment when he's talking to the police, oh, speaking in her daughter in the past tense, the nature of the book bag. It's like, okay, why did she still have the book bag? I think a scene that could have been different also when she talks to the teacher in the car, maybe when she gets into the car, we don't hear the door slam. because it was never open. So you see, there, just little subtle instances where I think that we could have had a little bit more, not just subtle, but like to establish a pattern that there's something odd going on. There's something like clearly inconsistent going on. And so that allows us to bring us into her emotional state more. That's just me. Obviously a lot of people they could have been okay with the subtle cues,
Hmm.
and I think that it did work for what it was attempting to try to do. It's just that would have been my thing, you know.
See, I I like the way that Tyler put that with
Mm-hmm.
keeping the daughter in the film and whatnot, having us see what's going on with her.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that was my red flag would have just been the, like I mentioned earlier, the science fair project. Because
Mm-hmm.
me looking at that, I'm like, that isn't that a pipe bomb? Wait, what? Why is she doing this for a science project? Like that thing in
Yeah.
itself was, even though I knew of the plot twist, but that was the one thing that was continuously playing in the back of my head. Like, is this really a bomb? Like, or is this really her science fair project? Like, which one is it? And then when
Mm-hmm.
she was like, no, this is not a bomb. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah,
when we have
exactly.
that conversation, I'm like, okay, cool. All right, so it's not a bomb, but now I'm just like, wait. Like after the reveal, I'm just like, whoa, hold up. That might have actually been a real bomb. What are we doing here?
Why
What?
did we like exactly? Why did we just
So,
drop this? Right, like that. That yeah,
so
yeah.
like I didn't like how there was the cut scene for the hallucination at all because that
Mm-hmm.
didn't make any sense to me because I did enjoy the part where what's her name? It's not Cheryl. Is it Cheryl?
Oh,
The
Sherry.
bank Sherri Shepherd. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
When her character, what was her character in the film though? Well, I'm
Oh,
just
her
gonna say
character.
bank manager. So
Mm-hmm.
when the bank manager mentioned, "Oh, I know they told me a while ago, and I just want to be here with you," like that part right there in that cut scene meant so much more than what
Mm-hmm.
followed after that because there was
Right.
the approaching, and then to connect the bank manager Sherri Shepherd's language, where she said they have specific protocol
Mm-hmm.
when there's a bum here. We need them to think that there's a bum here so that
Mm-hmm.
they don't just come up in here and shoot her, right? And having that conversation and then knowing, oh, girl wrote what she wrote on the bathroom window saying that, oh, the bomb's not real. Uh, it just didn't make sense to me why them approaching the door in the hallucination was not the same outside of the hallucination because you already built up this scene to progress in this way. Now, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that it cannot be a place where, oh, they've decided finally, well, the FBI decided, okay, we can fall back. We can include that when she let
Mm-hmm.
out all the other people. We can show that, okay, the FBI sees that she's willing to participate in all that. They are falling back, falling in line to allow this thing to play out the way that that it needs to play out. Like all of
Mm-hmm.
that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Yeah.
way that they just went into this hallucination, now we have to see a black woman die.
Mm-hmm.
What was the purpose? We could have just gone to a straight scene where she's getting not necessarily a justice, but she's being protected. Like
Right.
Sherri walking out with the bank manager walking out with her hand in
Yeah.
hand, doing the steps with her, helping her see that you're not in this by yourself. We have another black woman who's been on the phone with you, fighting for you to make sure you get to live. Got rid of this
Mm-hmm.
cop who is part of the reason why you're going through all that you're going through today. I'm going to be here with you. She's going to be here telling you what to do. We could have just gone that route without there being more pain, be it
Mm-hmm.
visualized that she experienced. Like that part I felt was a little bit tasteless because we
Yeah.
didn't have to see Janiyah die.
Yeah. And then also just even speaking about the ending, so we get these like 2 to 3 like very big reveals that happen right back to back, and then we just end the movie. like with just
Thank
walking out the
you.
bank. I'm like, and Tyler has seemed to have had a run of doing that with his work recently, where it's like we'll get to like this very big part, and then we just end the film. Like, and even though obviously my heart, like I didn't want to see Janiyah in jail, but it's kind of like even if we got like a ending shot with them like closing cell bars, or maybe if we got a shot where like, oh, she's like in a therapy session or whatever. We didn't even need to see the execution really of the scene, but just to give us some sort of like closure as to what happens after the bank hostage. It's kind of like I understand from a creative sort of standpoint, because TV shows have been known to do this as well. They will want to leave things so vague so audience can really like interpret anything that they want in their mind. But however, there is an element of closure that I think that needs
Hmm.
to come with some definity as well. You know,
Hmm.
so I just think that that was like incredibly irresponsible to take us through Janiyah's like whole entire like psychological state, have this big reveal, and then when her and I think her name is Nicole. I think Sherri's name is Nicole in the yeah, but her coming out with Sherri's character who's the bank manager, and then we don't have any type of follow up with what happens. The movie just ends.
Right.
So, I mean, I just, there are certain things, again, where I say, I think the big concept for this film is great. And I think that certain, things are great about the film. It's just that certain aspects of the way that it's executed is like
Hmm.
a little bit up in the air. And I was reading some comments that for people who did not take the film, they were saying the hard thing that they were seeing, that the film is like trying to be 3 to 5 films in one. Some
Mm.
people say that in obviously with the whole bank standoff, all right, so we trying to do set it off. Like in another sense, are we with the nature of her dealing with thinking that she has to do this for her child is a callback to John Q with Denzel,
Mm.
and then the whole thing with the reveal is kind of like with Bruce Willis in
In
Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense, I
Sense,
thought that
you
too.
know. Yeah, so it's kind of like, so people were just, I think, in comments bringing up that with like a film like Set It Off, right? Where we have these 4 women that are driven to crime by grief, by poverty, by injustice, right? By the time we get to them actually deciding to rob, go on a robbing banks kind of killing spree, they aren't
Hmm.
just archetypes. Like we are with them,
We
so it's
want them
kind of
to
like
rob it.
we want it right. So it's like we respect the stakes of the film. So it's kind of like so we know at the end, even again, if you haven't watched Set It Off, go watch Set It Off and then come back and listen to it.
Oof,
But
such a good.
it's kind of like if you're going because we know in watching Set It Off, we know in the end they are not going to get away with this, even though we want them to get away with this, and even though we know who obviously lives. But it's kind of like if you're going to kill off main characters, it has to be earned,
Mm.
and that's something that F. Gary Gray understood. And that is also another reason why one thing I want to harp back to Tyler
Day after
is
day. Or,
what he does is that he doesn't, again, we know he writes, produces, directs, but this is the important reason about why you also need collaborators. The fact that when F. Gary Gray got a very great black and white woman to collaborate writing the script of Set It Off, these women came from writing great films like What's Love Got to Do with It, and other projects. So it's like you get people who understand the stakes of the vision that you're trying to create. So when we get to the nature of like a film like John Q, we know Denzel, he takes the hospital hostage because the
mhm.
system won't save his son. Right. So we have a very tight plot. We have the very escalating tension that allows viewers to both sympathize and also be discomforted by him because it's like, all right, Denzel, I'm always with you, but we didn't took a whole hospital hostage. What we doing? What we doing here? So it doesn't rush the emotional journey of the character. Like I feel like we were with Janiyah in this space. And again, Taraji is acting her butt off. But
Mhm.
again, the fact that we have all of these sequence of events that are happening all within like 30 minutes of the film, it's like, well, damn, like what am I supposed to just like pay attention to?
Yeah.
And then so even in the reveal in the end with the nature of the hallucination, I love how people were bringing up about the nature of the sixth sense because it's kind of like that twist that Bruce Willis was dead the whole time, redefined really everything about the film. But the twist would work because the film had the clues, it had the tone and things like that. So it didn't feel like, I think in a broad sense, it didn't feel like we were tricked. It felt like, oh, we were invited into this space, and then now, oh, okay, now we get this big reveal at the end. So, I can
Mhm.
see why people were, bringing up that comment was like, okay, this is like three films trying to be in one.
Now, I have to admit, as soon as you said set it off, I went into myself and I had a moment because I'm quite certain it might register on the the live recording and everything. Because when I tell you when all of them died, actually, it just touched the heart because it's just like I
Yeah.
want them to. It just sends you. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, Cleo, oh my God. But anyways, I went somewhere for a second. But to backtrack towards like the way Tyler chose to end the film and not really closing it, that's rang so true for me because even for myself, I didn't get closure on this thing with the science fair project because I was like, okay, they're now out of the bank. What happens the next day? What happens when she's not able to stop the little beeping sound? Does it blow up? Is the bank open on Saturday? Like, at least give some, like, I was thinking that if they had to pass away, if they had to die at the end, that it would
Mm-hmm.
have been, and yeah, her name is Nicole. Nicole and Janiyah in a sad but truthful explosion. And then I would have been like, Nicole, you had your way out, girl. You had your way out. And I would have been feeling so much
Right. Yeah.
more for
Mm-hmm.
Nicole. But
Yeah.
if death had to be the end of the film, I would have felt somewhat vindicated knowing that it was a bomb the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Right.
I wanted that closure on that one little thing because I don't know. It looked like a pipe bomb in the beginning. It seemed like a pipe bomb in the purse. I mean, in the backpack.
Yeah.
It looked like one when she brought it out, and everybody's like, "Girl, are you sure that's not a bomb?" Like it all carried on, but now we act like it no longer exists. Like
Exactly.
I even, like you said, they could have just gone to a next day or her out of jail or her going to prison and, being on somebody's couch to talk about her experience there. Um, it would have been great. Like typically Tyler Perry, when he does mental health, he does a very, very poor job at doing it, which is another
Mm-hmm.
reason why I'm like, somebody else had to have wrote this. But this one, and it might have just been Taraji's acting, made it seem so much more realistic of someone going through a mental health episode where they are hallucinating these different acts, especially when
Mm-hmm.
you go back through the veil being broken on her, where
Yeah.
she's recognizing her daughter hasn't been there these entire time. Like
Yeah.
that was very well done to me.
Yeah, yeah,
Which
that's the thing. Yeah, and like you say, maybe that was done on purpose to because like you just say, he doesn't really know how to write certain things like mental health. So, and just like how I said earlier about how we consistently watch things that happen to his character
Mhm.
instead of actually getting into their internal view about what it is that they want. Maybe that's maybe like a niche that he has because of the fact that he doesn't. There are a lot of elements that he really doesn't write well. So
Mhm.
maybe that is maybe that's a thing about
Yeah. And I think for me, the thing that really sold the movie, and I think is why many people who enjoy it found it enjoyable, was the monologue that
Hmm.
Taraji did with on the live,
Yeah.
because that showed like the words that she said. If you just turn off the screen and just listen to it, it was powerful
Hmm.
words. It's about a
Right.
lived experience that so many people, male, female,
Hmm.
could. relate to being impoverished. People can relate to that. I relate to
Yeah.
that, right? I know these feelings. I know what it is like to struggle a day at a time,
Mhm.
hoping for something to change magically,
Yeah.
or knowing that just because I give $2, I'm going to be $4 in the hole right after that, or I'm
Mhm.
going to
Yeah, well, you got to
spend.
rob Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. I'm going to purposely overdraw my account knowing there's going to be a $35 hit, but I need to do this just so I
Yeah,
can make it till tomorrow, which is my actual payday. Like I've been there
exactly.
and I know how that feels. So like
Exactly.
her delivering that monologue was a way
Hmm.
to connect so many people, and I think that's why so people are responding to it as much is because
Hmm.
that phrasing without any
Yeah.
interruption, because I
Hmm.
think that's the thing that's most important is that you get all of this without an
Hmm.
interruption. You don't get
Exactly.
some sunny picture here. You don't, there wasn't any like soundtrack in the
Hmm.
background, probably some, sorrowful music or uplifting, but something to go with the tone of empowerment
Hmm.
and struggle at the
Exactly.
same time. Like you get all of that. And I believe
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I believe
No, go
that's
ahead.
why so many people connected with the film, and it's solely for
Hmm.
that portion because it made Janiyah so much more real. Like we can see the
Hmm.
experiences, we can see what she's been going through, and then for those people who may be drenched in misogyny, when she said what she said, you
Hmm.
recognize, oh, I have been there. I've been
Right.
to the same hell that this character is going through right now on some
Mhm.
level. May not be all the way in there, but I connect on some level with it.
Yes, and that is what I would say is really one of the big strengths of the film, is that the message that it sends, that this
Mhm.
is what it means to be unseen, unsupported, and left to break. And of course, now I think that the message could land a little bit more with like, I think a film like this doesn't necessarily need more drama, which,
Mhm.
like I said, that compile on of trauma, like I don't think for drama purposes is needed. It needs more care. So for me, if you took two or three aspects of that, like the eviction, the job stress, or just even the two of those things, and really like concentrated on like the totality of those.
Mhm.
Like for me in watching, I just felt like certain things were just unnecessary. Like we get it. So it's like the fact that I'm watching this 30 minutes with this compile on drama, it's like, I mean, not compile on drama, trauma, it's like I didn't need that to like get the point of like, yeah, this is like girlfriend, my girl is going through it right now. And like you
Mhm.
say, that is something we all, have come across. And so, but yeah, I really do think that one of the things that the great aspects about this film is that it really does shed a light on what happens of when you have black women that stand in solidarity together, when you have people who show up for you, like the community shows up for her,
Mhm.
and to say, it's yeah, just to say like, hey, this is what happens when you have the communal support. And I love the nature of like the older lady in the bank where she has that perspective. She's like, look, baby, what you doing is not right, but I am going to, as old church ladies do, they gonna pray for you. And
Mhm.
she understood. Like, and I like that perspective. I like the fact that you had a couple characters in there that were like, all right, this is like some bad crazy shit going on right now. Like, no matter what the circumstances are, you cannot just hold people hostage. However, we understand the nature of being brokenhearted and getting to a broken point in your
Mhm.
life where it is that you just snap. So I understand, even if it's still wrong.
Mhm. I feel
You
like
know?
the film itself is a message of the power of empathy, because when you think about it, like from the FBI perspective, are they wrong for what they wanted to do in terms of, securing the hostages, make everything, you know, let's go
Mm,
ahead and get it, take her out, boom, whatever. Um, Are they wrong for their perspective on that? Not necessarily. However, it
Mm,
does take out the human component, and the way that Detective Raymond approached it
mhm.
was in humanity.
Yeah.
Janaya said, "This is what you need to do in order for me to come out there. I don't want to die. I don't want to lose my
Mm,
life. I don't
right.
want to step outside and the guy who promised that he was going to murk me as soon as he has a legal means to do so, I don't want
Yeah.
to put myself in that space. I don't want that to happen to me. Just protect me." And that's all she's been asking for the entire film. I want some type of protection. I want there to be someone
Mhm.
to be on my side, to hear my concerns so that I can live for tomorrow.
Exactly.
And even when it came to like the black officer, that the male officer, one of the things that kind of pissed me off a little bit was that after Officer Detective Raymond spoke on her situation, oh, now it's real enough for me to provide empathy for her because, oh, I now see that you went through a lot. Like it
Mhm.
irks me just in general, and it doesn't have to
Yeah.
just be like a black thing or racial thing. It's just in order for people to really begin to see the humanity in you or to
Mhm.
provide empathy to you, they
Right.
have to know all of your struggles. Why can that not just be the introduction that you
Yeah.
know I have a past?
Or even just to be protected in the world. Like,
Hmm.
something has to happen in order for you to get protected. How many times do we hear from law enforcement when somebody is being stalked that, oh, okay, they actually have to do something, in order for
Hmm.
something to be done? It's kind of like, okay, yeah, I can take out a restraining order, I can do this, but because we have to follow the letters of the letters of the law can possibly get me killed.
Exactly.
So, and then knowing the fact of if you are black or brown skin or a minority, that the law was not even made for you anyway, it's like that doesn't endear me to want to fight to follow the law. So yeah, that this is a classic case of, I hope that with a film like this, that of course, ultimately telling stories about Black people, especially about, again, the solidarity of Black women, and that as we tell this story and multiple stories, that we deserve stories that are more than just about survival. We deserve stories that tell a interiority about us as well. Like, this is not just what's happening to me, but this is how I'm responding, to what's going on, you know.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, again, I will say in my rankings, I think around the nature of like Tyler projects, it for me, it's not net obviously like I don't even know what you would consider to be like the best, but it's damn for sure,
Hmm.
definitely not the worst.
Yes.
So I will say I can commend him for doing what he did. Again, I still have that aspect about him that even though he says that he brings other writers into the room and stuff like that, I just think that Tyler, for me, and what I have seen over the years, again, Tyler for me is a great visionary when it comes to big concepts. But for me, I think big concepts, you have to bring in people who can write and deliver the vision that you set forth. Again, the nature of why I cannot remember who was the overall person for John Q, but I remember they got Nick Cassavetes. I can't probably not pronounce his name right, but Nick was also the one that wrote for The Notebook, the
Hmm.
movie The Notebook. So it's kind of like it's bringing in people that can take on the responsibility and do your vision of what you want this film to be justice. And again, this doesn't mean that, oh, like they're doing this to, be Oscar nominated or Emmy nominated. I mean, all those things are great because then that puts more coins in people's pockets and stuff like that. But to me, sometimes I think in just seeing Tyler in general, just for personally, he sacrifices a lot of the good vision that he has because he refuses to let other people take on certain mantles.
Hmm. And For me, well, first I say this film is one of the ones that will rank up there pretty high for Tyler. Not like with his plays, because again, I rewatch those.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But
I
but in terms of films, I put it up there for him because it
yeah.
was very well done. I really did enjoy it. And again, I don't feel like he wrote it. Um, so overall. Like I do wish that he would include a lot more writers. Like it's not enough to put on black actors because those are the people performing the things for you,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But what about the black directors that's out there? What about
Mhm.
the black writers that's out there? The black producers, the other ones other than outside of the ones who really can already get their things out there, like a Shonda Rhimes and
Mhm.
whatnot. But like Ava, like
Yeah.
how often are we going to create spaces for the new generation of
Right.
writers and directors and out there?
Yeah. And that's another thing. Before we transition into talking about what's going on personally with him,
Mhm.
as of recently, I wanted to just briefly touch on because there's of course this uh conversation going online about why is it that, especially black actors continue working with Tyler, despite the nature of how his scripts are received and things like that. And I have often always said, when you have a particular audience, your audience is always going to work for you.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I've always felt is that Tyler writes roles for black actors, period. Right.
Hmm.
So in a Hollywood system that routinely sidelines or underwrites black characters, Tyler does build entire films and shows centered on blackness. And so like Taraji, and a lot of people have said he gives opportunities, roles that, you don't get often, roles that do carry weight. Now, regardless of how you take it personally, it's there. A lot of people have said because he is the mogul that he is, he creates a safe, black centered production environment. And again, we'll get more into that when we speak about him personally, what's going on now. But it is to say that, when you are on a lot or you're in a studio set where you can feel like, okay, I'm feeling seen, I'm feeling respected, I'm feeling trusted, not just I'm showing up to do a job, but like I'm not being tokenized as well. And then ultimately, I think the big thing is that what a lot of people see as tropes, I think the actors see as cultural truths, right? So again, critics, fans, we often criticize Tyler on these tropes: the suffering black woman, the violent dark skinned man, know, like this whole spiritual climax, kind of happens, right?
Hmm.
And yes, in many ways, like we see the patterns, and yeah, they need evolution. It can be reductive, blah blah blah. But in a way, many black actors grew up in communities that he writes about. The characters, yeah, they are often melodramatic on screen, but to many, they're dramatized versions, right? Of real
Hmm.
people, your family, your neighbors, your church folk. So it is, so it's like to say, like, no, he isn't inventing tropes. Tropes have always been here, but he's like heightening the truths based in these tropes. So and then again, of course, the obvious being the financial security. Of course, many actors have said Tyler is the first person that has paid them what they are worth. So hey, in the end of the day, as an actor, it's about performance. Like we say, we have seen actors take some, shitty scripts and, turn it into performance gold. And sometimes that's the reason why people watch a particular piece of work. Again, me and you, we're both soap opera watchers. And I can also admit, out of 60 years of, the soap operas being on, there is really not, I don't really think, a whole entire original story that any soap operas can do. However, we as soap fans, we tune in because of the performances, because they act their asses down,
Hmm.
you know. So, I will say that, for Tyler, and I hope that people continue to get their bag as long as they're, working with him in certain regards.
Right, 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 right. So the lawsuit. Yay.
Yeah. look, look,
Um,
every transit.
So for anybody who I'll well, I have a link to the full court document. So I found that in a news article, so I'm going to have to find the news article again so I could link that article to link the. I probably might just include the direct link to the download just to save people time. But I do recommend reading news articles as well because it's very important to do your due diligence in these cases because I know even from what I see online, I'm just like, y'all clearly haven't done your due diligence. You haven't watched a video that really goes into details or anything like that to go over the lawsuit, like what is alleging and all that. You just have
Right.
people responding to the text messages. There's more to it than just the text messages,
Text
people. That's what
messages.
I need y'all to know first and foremost. Now, with this situation, it is alleged that Tyler Perry has sexually assaulted actor of one of his. Well, there was two shows. I think. Well, one was a movie and the other was a show. I forget. I know the show, The Oval, is
The Oval.
where Derek Dixon was.
Dixon.
An actor on that show, and he's suing for up to $260 million, a very large sum of money, $250 million. He said, Tyler, you're a billionaire. You got many of those. Go ahead and pay me a quarter of that, fam. And, he said what he had to say. But- Now, just for some clarity on terminology for people, because some not it's hard for people to understand the language of like sexual assault, sexual violence, rape, and all that. Um, um, Derek is not alleging Tyler Perry raped him. He is not alleging that. He did allege sexual assault. So if you've ever heard of the thing, all squares are rectangles and not every rectangle is a square, I'm going to use that concept to explain what these things are. So, all rapes are sexual assault, but not all sexual assaults are rape. Okay. Going back another layer. All sexual assaults are a form of sexual violence, but not all sexual violence equals sexual assault. Okay, there's levels to this. So he alleged sexual assault, and that is sexual assault via groping and things of that nature. And also, there's some power dynamic situations going on that he's including in this lawsuit as well. It's very helpful to really dive deep into those letters if you have not yet. I will even link a YouTuber who's it's a 3 hour video, but it's 3 hours because he goes page by page of the lawsuit. I will put that in there, and I'll even include Jessica Wu's take on it as well, which she goes into some of that, but not all of it. There's a perspective there, and this is for those who don't like to read. And if you just don't like either of those, I don't know what else to do for you. Like, I just don't know. There's so many resources. It is not
Look, look up your own research.
right, and I'm not providing this because they have a certain perspective, like they're agreeing that this is sexual assault, or they're not agreeing that it's sexual assault. That's not why I'm including those people in the show notes for people, but it's to show what that information is, and after you hear, read it, and all that other stuff, then you get to take an educated and informed opinion on what's going on. Now, if you decide all this is a lie, that is perfectly fine, but at least you did some kind of due diligence in reading all that, and that is okay for you to believe that this may not be the case.
Mhm.
Okay. So, personally, well, is there anything I missed before I even dive into my own personal opinions? Okay. So personally, my professional background, victim advocacy. I studied sexual assault, rape culture, and all of that. I work with survivors of childhood sexual trauma, as well as adults who've been sexually assaulted. So, because of my framing in my work, I do hold the bias of believing victims when they come out. That does believing victims does not mean that there was a crime created. This doesn't mean that this person is telling the truth. It means there may be some merit here worth talking about that this person needs to unpack because they feel as though they've been sexually assaulted, and I'm willing to give grace in the belief that this is something that has happened to them before I automatically deny it because of my fandom or my support of another person. I'm willing to believe this person as maybe having a valid experience that they went through with this other individual that they're alleging that assault with. And that's perfectly fine to have. It does not mean, oh, you think all men are wrong and blah, blah, blah. Tyler Perry was about to buy NBC and all this other stuff. It doesn't validate any of those things. It just means there's a possibility that there may be some truth here and it's worth that person going to court and be seen as a potential survivor or victim of what they're claiming. That's it.
Yeah.
So, and I on that side of I'm willing to believe Derek until there's something that comes out to say that it was not
Well,
the case, that he is
right.
doing this for a money grab. And if that happens, then I'm okay with admitting, oh, well, you are wrong for doing that, Derek.
Hmm.
That hurts real life experiences of other people. You see how
That's one
that
of those.
works?
Yeah, that's one of those. Step into the light, Caroline.
Yeah, step into the light. We need to have a conversation because there's somebody who's been harmed, whose story got overlooked because
Yeah.
of your BS. But until it
Yeah.
comes out as that, I'm willing to stay on his side.
Yeah, and I think when cases like this come out, I think it's one of those things. It's important to remain neutral because
Mhm.
you, unless you were there, you don't know what's true or what's not. So
Okay.
when this story came out, it was like, oh, do I think the allegations could be true? Yes, absolutely. And for like the reasons you just said, one, there is a specificity and a timeline of his claims that lends some sort of credibility, right? So,
Hmm.
like you say, a lot of times false accusations tend to be vague or like it's like, okay, what is this? But obviously we have a very detailed kind of complaint. We have date, events, clearly we have references to text messages, other kinds of evidence that's kind of coming. We also know that this is like patterns, of course, with the entertainment industry, from Harvey Weinstein to, of course, like the whole trial that's going on with Diddy, and just all that type stuff. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, Tyler Perry did it, but it means that it's plausible. Again, and that's what we have to hit home. Like, something like this can be plausible. And I loved how you, of course, I always love when you go into your background spiel of letting our audience know the differences and the different layers of the sexual assault and, things like that, because sexual violence doesn't always look violent. It can be manipulative, it can be confusing, especially when you're having somebody like a Tyler Perry, who is a incredibly huge figure, where again we talked about earlier, he writes, directs, produces. I mean, the man has his own studio,
Hmm.
so it's like, just getting into that whole larger than life kind of aspect. But it is to say, if for whatever reason, uh, you know, Dixon made up or fabricated the whole thing, to me, if I'm thinking it, because I try to put myself in the mindset of both people. So if I'm Dixon and if I fabricated this whole thing, he's made a very incredibly risky move, right?
Hmm.
You're burning a bridge with one of the wealthiest and most influential black moguls alive. And if it is true that, rumors that have circulated about Tyler Perry, that, he has a certain aesthetic type, that, he takes care of, young men, that, he has on the side, and things like that. And again, these are all things that have been talked about through the years. There's nothing that has ever been confirmed, denied, or anything like that. This is just what's been talked about. And so for me, it would be like, okay, if I'm in that kind of mindset, why would I, even if this was something wrong that has done to me, if I've been getting something out of it, why would I risk shaking that tree unless I had some intangible evidence,
Hmm.
or something like that. So it's kind of like that kind of self sabotage, if he is fabricating this, then that leads into, okay, he's dealing with some sort of like trauma response that,
Hmm.
he needs to, of course, get help with. But yeah, and then of course, like as I think about it from if I was to put myself in the mind of Tyler Perry, could this be a power grab or, some type of retaliation? Yeah, he's a mogul. I mean, why
Hmm.
wouldn't somebody do that? But to me, it's like those things are just like harder to prove. So because it's kind of like as a skeptic, I would say, okay, well, why now? Well, we
Hmm.
have conversations about that all the time. Why wait years if assault happened years ago? Why would you still work at a place, afterwards? And we know that those things are not, cut and dry. There is
Hmm.
fear, there's gaslighting, there is, again, retaliatory you know, acts that are done. So again, these are not, just simple cookie cutter answers. Um, but what I will say, and I'm gonna take it there for a minute. If I will say, if what has come out does prove itself to be true, the one audience that I do feel that will defend Tyler is the audience who has pretty much made his fan base, which
Hmm.
is the Black church.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Predominantly, a lot of Tyler's fans come from the nature of the Black church. And the reason why I'm taking it here is because we have seen this through other examples in history, where if this case proves to be true, it suggests that his public faith driven respectability image is a mask for more private coercive behavior. And if it's proven that it's false, it shows how powerful Black men, you know,
Hmm.
deeply vulnerable to public character assassination, you know, things like that. But I do feel that if the allegations are true, there is a part of me that feels like the church might, I'm not going to say will, I'm just going to say might still defend him. Because when we think about the nature of Christian redemption, we think about Black Southern values, morality, things like that. In many religious contexts, especially the Black church, sexual assault is seen as something that can be forgivable. There is something about the nature of like this is framed sexual assault a lot of times in especially in the Black church has been framed as a quote unquote moral failing. So if this person has committed such an act, this is a losing of control. It's an issue that if we pray and we have forgiveness, things like that, we can get this person on a better path. The reason why I bring this up is because we've often, of course, talked about have there always been subtle things about Tyler's aspect about queerness. If he's,
Hmm.
obviously identified in the LGBTQ community, which given the way that he writes into this, it's a running joke at this point. It's like Tyler, honey, come on out, just
Please
come on.
just,
The gays, we got you.
you know.
But it is to say, but again, the reason why I bring up the church is because queerness, unfortunately, and this is not to say all churches. You have a lot of great LGBTQ affirming churches, so this is not a whole encompass statement of all churches. However, in a lot of churches, queerness that is often seen as identity, not an act. So by you being a queer person, you are rebelling against God, you are rebelling against nature, you are rebelling against manhood.
Hmm.
Even if Tyler Perry did something harmful, his alignment with the heteronormative Christianity gives him cover.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of respectability politics, that has gone, that gets into this conversation. And this is something, of course, we can, of course, that's a whole nother discussion. But I did have it in my head. I was thinking to myself, for whatever reason, if the allegations were proven to be true, knowing how much of a social media driven society we live in, people will try to cancel you, or, turn you, just turn their back on you in a minute. But I was thinking to myself, I'm like, given Tyler's stature in the community, and to the actual world, it's kind of like I was thinking about, if the allegations were true, who would be like the people who would still like defend it?
Hmm.
Because everybody always still has their defense.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I feel like for Tyler to regain, because of course there's going to be the backlash if he is culpable in this lawsuit and found guilty. I feel like there'd be about 2, 3 months where he'll be shunned from the church or shunned
Mm,
from people overall. In that process, or after about 3 months or so, you'll see Tyler Perry going on a tour within the church of denouncing his past ways and asking for
mm,
forgiveness from God, and even go through the route of, the what is that practice that's illegal? It's the psychological practice. I always forget it. I was about to say corrective surgery. That's not it. But essentially, say that he's gone to therapy to
right.
treat his gay ways and those thoughts, and they're no longer there, and he's fighting against the sin and all that. And as he's going through that harmful rhetoric and whatnot, you have more people, especially Black Christians, that will align with that messaging because that's rings truthful and
Exactly.
connects with what it means to be Black male, Black
Yeah.
hetero, and Black in it with God.
Mhm.
So they will start to buy into that, and eventually, after a year or two, Tyler Perry back to where he was
Yeah.
overall. Probably not
Yeah.
be in every single um, door or every single place that he was, every single room that he was in the past, but he will still be invited back into multiple rooms.
Mm,
So it's just because
yeah.
that's the way capitalism works.
Yeah. Exactly.
And something that as the week progressed and I sat and thought about the amount, because people kept bringing up, well, he's suing for about 260 million, blah, 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 which I can myself would agree that that is a large number, but I'm not knocking him for trying whatever he can. If he gets it, he gets it, because anybody who can ask me for 260 million? Like, but anyway, like seeing how large that amount is, I thought about it like, okay, if he's even thinking about um like how much he believed his project would have been if Tyler Perry would have actually put it out there, if Tyler actually ran his show beyond a pilot and got it connected to Netflix and all that. I don't know if it would have earned $260 million. So for me, I was like, that doesn't seem as possible. But again, so I just played multiple different scenarios in my head of like, what's the reason for it being so high? And I'm at a place where I'm thinking Derek and his lawyers are moving towards a class action lawsuit. And
Mm,
the reason why is because Christian Keys was also named in the
mhm,
lawsuit. And for
mm,
those who don't remember, a couple years ago, Christian Keys, or it might have been, yeah, it might have been 2 years ago. Christian Keys, who's a former actor in Tyler Perry's films, I believe he did some of his stage plays as well.
mhm,
Um, he um put out something on IG where he was talking about he been approached by a billionaire, a very prominent billionaire, who tried to coerce him into um, showing off his naked body. And he
Mm,
mentioned that they were the billionaire was asking for like a million, no, not a million, was going to offer to pay him $100,000 or something like that. And Christian was like, I'm not going to do that, right? And
mm,
he said that he had evidence and all this other stuff connected to that.
yeah.
Now, people asked and inquired whether or not it was Tyler Perry because, that's who he was working with at the time. And I believe he denied it, but he never really named the,
No,
the
right, yeah.
person.
Yeah, it
It
was
was
kind of like
only yeah,
the
it was only speculation. Now, and this is why I mentioned the Jessica Wu thing, but or Jessie Wu, because I was watching her video about it, and she played the full version of what Christian Key said at the time, and something stood out to me, and it was that he mentioned that he purposefully waited beyond the statute of limitations for him to be able to go to court and seek justice that way because he wanted to just find justice his own way, not like nothing violent or anything, but find peace for himself, get his career off the ground the way that he wants to, go the slow route versus the speediated route. But in what he was communicating, it struck me because it's like when we think about why did this person wait so long? Why did this person choose this, that, and the third? Um, it made me start to think that there's some people who may value the history of a certain person or even what they've done for a community. Because if I bring this up, that's less jobs for another person. That's
mm,
less pay that people are going to get paid. That means we have to go to this space that already doesn't want blackness in the room to now
yeah.
fight for the one role yet again. So do I
Mm,
want to tarnish all of that possibility because of my own hurt, my own trauma, my own experience?
right.
To gain the justice that I rightfully deserve from how I was victimized or preyed upon by another person? Do I want to be responsible of ruining and ending the career for so many other people because I want to find justice for myself? That is a hard weight to carry for a person. And I can
Mm,
see why a person will want to be silent because it's out of protecting others. In protecting others, they're not protecting themselves, which also opens the door for that same person to victimize another. So
exactly.
that's one of the
Ex-
things that really stood out to me.
Yeah. And just to hark back to something you had made mention of earlier about, the amount that's being, sued for. I remember there was a guy who I cannot remember what his name is, but he made a Twitter video that was talking about like the amount that Cassie was suing for when it came to Diddy. And he had a very interesting perspective because I think he worked in law for many years, and he's like, whenever people talk about the kind of what they seem to think of as ridiculous amounts of money, he's
Hmm.
like, well, think about the fact that we don't have a way to monetize the nature of when harm is inflicted on a person. And he says that, think about it, in all other retrospects, we do. Like he was giving the example, if you hit my car and you damage my car is worth a certain value.
Hmm.
If you break an item in my home, that item was worth a certain value. So a lot of times we have things to monetize to think about the value of. But he was saying that when it comes to sexual assault cases or anything that's done any bodily inflicted harm, there's no way to monetize that. So he basically his perspective was is that that's really left up to the person. Like if
Hmm.
you want to sue, if you really believe that your emotional and physical damage is worth $500, fine. If you feel like it's worth 500 million, fine. Because
Hmm.
there is no way to quantify the 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 physical harm that that you or emotional harm that you inflicted on somebody. And even as I see that on like something like I tune in a couple times to like Hot Bench. Like where you have like the tribunal of judges, and in their courtroom, you can only sue for a maximum of $5,000. So you
Hmm.
have a lot of cases where people will bring something before a court, and yeah, they're wanting to get damages for this or for that is worth a certain amount, and then they want like, you know, $7,000 in emotional distress and damages. And even if the judges agree that they should be paid, it's kind of like as a court, they're only allowed to give up to $5,000. So even that, in the nature of that, can be quantified.
Hmm.
So I really liked that video, how he just put that into perspective. And regardless if you agree or not, I just like that perspective. And what
Hmm.
he's saying is that no matter if it's millions of dollars or a dollar and some cents, like people will sue for what it is that they feel like their pain is worth.
Exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to really start to think about a little bit more. It's like you're not this person, you don't have their lived experience. One, again, Tyler Perry is a billionaire. He's been a billionaire for years now. It's not like he just did that last year. He's been a billionaire for several years. And he's been a millionaire even longer than that. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, this is something that he can afford. Okay. Like I get that you feel like it's a large amount for Tyler Perry to be losing. It's really not. Like, will it be something that may cause some issues for him? Okay, yeah. But it's
Mm-hmm.
not something that he won't be able to make himself back out from. He just released Straw. He probably made the same amount of money needed for the lawsuit, or at least half of it, opening weekend
Mm-hmm.
for how many people watch Tyler Perry related things. His residuals, his royalties. He gets paid on all of those other different titles that he holds for the work. Director, writer, producer. He's getting a check. So, and that means that check is just going to be a lot more larger for him compared to the other people that he hire on. So he's fine. He is fine, people. Let Derek put whatever value he wants for himself, and it is what it is. If the court allows it, the court allows it.
If they don't, they don't.
If
So
they don't, they don't. Um, like I get the belief of this being a money grab. If it is, it's going to come out in court.
exactly,
It
exactly.
tends to happen. Like it's not like that Jay-Z situation when Jay-Z was just like, just go ahead and take me to court and prove it. What
Yeah,
happened? That
I mean,
lawsuit dropped.
honestly, because honestly, it's kind of like when you know that the truth is on your side, because again, the way that the law works is that you also have to present evidence,
Mhm.
and now, of course, it is up to a court to determine how to interpret that evidence. But like, if you know something is like just real bogus, it's kind of like the one thing, and I personally have always believed this. The one thing I will never give into is blackmail. You are never going to blackmail me. Like I will tell the absolute truth, and even when I know the truth is on my side, it's like, okay, call your bluff, do it.
Listen, don't. This is why I tell people, do not come to me with like any kind of ultimatums. It's not going to go in your favor.
Yeah, it's not.
It's
It's not
just
gonna work.
not.
It's not gonna go. It's not gonna. Yeah. It's not. No,
It's
that's not
just
it.
not. Like, oh, something I wanted to jump back on for a second is power dynamics, similar to the Diddy trial. Same with this lawsuit with Tyler Perry. I need for people to pause for a second before they judge of whether or not something may be valid or not, to think about how can this be appropriate.
Hmm.
So there's a power dynamic that exists here, whether or not this is true or is not true, but based on the communications through those text messages, we have to think about what is the power dynamic. This is employer communicating with his employee about his individual sex life. because that in itself is not Tyler Perry's business. Like
Mm,
you can say, "Oh, we are friends," this, that, and the third, but as soon as you are under my care, under my employment, there's certain types of conversations that you cannot have as an employer with your employee. Unless this is why I said it before, I say it again. This is why we need HR, like somebody or some third party to step in to tell you
mhm.
whether or not this is appropriate or not. When this is why HR requires people who are going into personal relationships with each other to have that documented so everybody's aware that this is what's going on so that if something comes out, you two willingly participated in this relationship, knowing that the power dynamic existed.
Exactly.
And it's documented and it's made aware that this is a relationship that's here. And r- reading some of those text messages, it was giving off, Tyler, you're thirsty, fam. Back up a little bit, calm down a little bit. It's okay. Like you may be interested in that Derek, but that's fine. But it doesn't seem as though Derek is trying to give you that energy back. It just did not give that. Like
Mm,
even as a friend, if I like if we non-employee thing, okay, I can ask, oh, how's things been in therapy? Have you really been how's the progress going on with engaging and learning about that guiltless sex that you want? Like what's how are things coming along for you? I get that. Showing concern, showing true care about a person. However, again, once there's a power dynamic here, there's certain things you should not be talking about because then it becomes inappropriate for a business relationship.
exactly.
Like, let's be real about that. And even like a part of what Derek alleged is that he felt as though his the likelihood of his show being produced by Tyler was contingent upon Derek's willingness to put out, to have sex with
Mhm.
Tyler Perry. Mind you, one of the huge shockers that came out of this lawsuit is learning that Tyler Perry is a top. I did not see that. I did not. That was not on my bingo card at all because power bottom at
Well, I kind of
most.
Well, I actually kind of see that because I could think like even though the nature of Tyler dressing, as Medea things like that, I don't know. I can see him just because of the fact of his like mogul like status
Mm.
and money, like him taking like I feel like he would take those power dynamics like into
Mm.
the
See,
person.
I don't know. It just like as someone who loves and enjoys a film top, it just didn't connect to me that like I promise every time it's like, hey sister, how you doing, girl? Like it's just, I just saw Patalis trying to bump purses with somebody. That's all that it was just a shocker to me. Uh,
Mm,
but like yeah, Derek really, based off of the allegations, felt as though in order for him to move into his career, to have his show produced and whatnot, um, it would either had to be give up some ass or just don't be employed. Which is a horrible place for any person to operate in. And
mhm,
even like on paper, the conversation, the alleged conversation that was had between Tyler and Derek related to his time on the Oval, it was already stated and understood that he was going to be on trial for the first season, and that on the
mhm,
last episode, Derek was going to get shot like 4 times, and that's going to
mhm,
be like the end of that. And then for season two, based off of how he does. They bring his character back and all of that. That makes sense. That's cool. Understood. That's
mhm,
where we're going into this. Now, it was also alleged that Tyler, whenever he had issues with other um, actors that was on set, that he would then think about killing them off of the show, um, because he's annoyed with them or they're not performing or that he's just has some issue, something going on, but it's not
Mhm.
necessarily that they were being bad actors. That part was not made clear in the lawsuit, but it seemed as though when he had a temper tantrum related to a certain person, now it's time to write them off. To the
Mhm.
point where he offered to record or film each of the characters essentially getting shot to in order for them to realize that their job is not guaranteed.
Mhm.
Like you're walking around here thinking that you're gonna be in season two, and I don't need that cockiness. I need you to go ahead and step that back a couple of notches.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that happening because, like I say, Tyler, love and hate him. Tyler, got an ego, so it's like there's only
Hmm.
room for. That's kind of like when you a diva. It's like no, we can't have multiple divas in one space. With that, just
Exactly.
it's a too much conflict for energy. Like I am the head ego up in here, so it's like you
Exactly.
got to step.
Exactly. And I remember, well, one, I need to find that Boondocks episode with Tyler about him because it was greatness. And I feel like thinking about it, because those allegations about Tyler Perry were already out during that time, about different situations, about the types of men that he chooses for his films and plays and all of that. So that part it's kind of let's go ahead and go back to it a little bit. It's like here we are. What was there some truth in the episode? Is that why we had to do the cease and desist, Tyler? I want to know. I've always wanted to know because once that happened, I got really let me go ahead and turn down these. Okay, what's going on here, Tyler?
Yeah,
Why
that's
did
what
you
it was
feel that
saying. Where it's
hurt?
like your actions, the actions speak louder than words. So it's like, why you
Okay,
trying? Because I mean, the Boondocks, I mean, makes fun of a lot of
a
things. So
lot
it's
of
like
things.
you really took this personally. Like, what's going on?
Real personal. And
Really?
then I remember the scene where he pretty much got everybody in order and they were like a straight line and all
Mhm.
like crisp and whatever. And a couple years after that, or it might have been a little bit before, I forget. But I think it was Monique who was talking about her experience with Tyler Perry
Mhm.
meeting him the first time, and she mentioned that he'll clap his hands and people will be there to deliver whatever it is that he needed. When I learned of that news, that's when I was like, that man is a problem. That man right there, I don't know. That's not healthy. That does not seem like good behavior to me. And that is
Mhm.
also when I really, really started to like fade away from being that much of a Tyler Perry fan. And that's when my letdown truly started because, again, this was somebody that I looked up as a child because of me liking theater, me being able to see Black people, people like me on the screen, as well as someone who's a little bit on the sassier side, most definitely when it comes to be like throwing back rhetoric at people every now and again. To like people thought that I acted a certain way because I was mimicking Medea, and I was like, no, this is just me. Like,
Mhm.
so it was like having that kind of connection with the fictional character, and then all this stuff continued to happen, had to let it go.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I mean, let's just be candid, and this may just be me, but hey, if I get people who agree with me, wonderful. Just even thinking about it, the reason I think why that ego plays such a part about why he writes, directs, produce, and all these things is because of the fact like he's not a great actor. Like outside of Medea, like it's kind of like one, if you look at the nature of his filmography, right? Like for the roles that he has played outside of Medea, I mean, or even just outside of his own work, even
Hmm.
because of course he's played other characters with inside his work. But it's like when is the last film or like even just TV show that had Tyler Perry in it that you're like, oh, I remember him for that role?
Hmm.
Crickets.
Low key, there I don't remember what movie it was, but there was a film where Tyler Perry was playing a villain. He was like a secret agent going after somebody. I forgot what was going on. But I didn't see the full film, but I saw a scene with him in it and he was acting. And that seeing him act in that, I was like, you need to be a villain because he did such a great job. Like without, outside of Medea, because he plays her down. He is her, okay? He
Yes.
performs her because he's performing himself, and I love that for him, right?
Mm.
When he tries to be in any other role, especially a straight black man, it just doesn't connect. However, when he played that villain, I was like, nigga, this right here, Tyler, this is you. This is
In your bag.
home for you. I
In
don't
your
know
bag.
why. Do more
Yeah,
villain.
and don't make and I don't want people to mistake. Like, I'm not saying that the fact that I don't necessarily believe like he's an actor doesn't mean that he doesn't have acting ability. Of course he does.
Yes.
But like, I'm just saying, like, if we think about like the discography, right,
Hmm.
of him, it's like, okay, honestly, when is the last thing I've actually seen Tyler Perry, not Medea,
Hmm.
but like Tyler Perry in that is like, okay, yeah, he did that. But like you say, that was a great role, and it's kind of like it's like a one-off type of thing.
Yeah, and that's the sad part. He needs to be more
Yeah,
villains. And like
yeah,
even
and that's
on
the thing. When you
film,
find your niche, make it work for you.
right, even on film as Medea, he doesn't perform the role as great. That's crazy. Like,
Hmm.
like it's like whenever I see the films, Tyler playing these different characters, of course he sucks as Brian. And again, he's writing for himself. How can you suck at acting for a character that you wrote?
Hmm.
Why does Brian suck so bad? But anyway, is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but then him being Medea on screen can work sometimes, but it usually doesn't connect for me. Him
Hmm.
being Joe also is a failure for whatever reason. Joe is funny now. The comedy that Tyler Perry writes for film and in play, phenomenal. I'm not just gonna
Yeah.
hands down, he does a great job on that. But it's not until you see him on the stage where he truly comes
Hmm.
alive. And I don't
Right.
think Tyler has been coached in making that transference of
Hmm.
how to deliver lines on screen versus on stage. And there's a difference. And I don't
Hmm.
think he's fully mastered that yet. However, again, him as a villain, we need more of
Right.
that. But at the
And
same time,
exactly. And I think that there's a certain nuance that comes when you're trying to portray different characters because, and it's not to compare people or, anything like that because everybody's craft is very different. And
mhm,
again, this is not bashing, or meant to bash Tyler. It's just things that we notice. But like, I compare what he does to like one of my favorite actors of all time, Martin Lawrence.
mhm,
Like, when I watch Martin and, or watching the Martin show, it's like when I see Shanae or when I look at Otis or when I look at Jerome, they are actually like whole characters, the whole
mhm,
characters to me. I don't see Martin when I look at, those characters because they are also like built out people. It's like a lot of times when you look at the nature of like Joe or like even Medea or like Brian and even aspects where they're all in scene together, you don't really get like them like standalone-ish. So it's hard to see Tyler Perry like operate in that space. So it's like we never really get like for example like Joe being like a comedic relief. We don't really ever get Joe outside of Medea,
mhm,
or even when it comes to Medea, I mean, as much as Medea interacts with people and stuff, Medea is in some ways always tied to Joe or to another character
mhm,
that's being played. So it's not like, oh, okay, we actually get to see an evolution of Joe as a character. He's just there for comedic relief. Whereas when Martin built out his characters, I mean, you take for instance, like when we first, Jerome is like we say, a pimp from the Himalayas a player from the Himalayas, right? Shanae is a business owner that will get you told, right?
mhm,
Otis, for as cuckoo as Otis is, he is a damn good officer, you know. So we get to see these iterations of characters like somebody like Martin creates, or even if we want to take it back, comedic legend Eddie Murphy, right?
mhm,
I loved how Kiki Palmer just recently, because she has a movie out with him right now. called The Pickup. And I loved how she said in her interview, like, Nutty Professor is like such a golden film. Like, it's a shame it did not win, any type
Hmm.
of awards, because to embody different characters in the same scene where everybody has to have a bit of nuance all at once. It's like
Hmm.
that is crazy genius to do.
He did that. And like being young and seeing that, it didn't take until, being a little bit older and recognizing that Eddie Murphy was all those characters for me to realize Eddie Murphy
Yes,
was
and
every
that is
single
what Kiki.
character.
That's what Kiki brought up in her interview. She's like, I didn't realize that you were actually different people until I was older. Until I was older.
Listen, he did such a great job. And just for anybody who might just be like, what does Vernon know about acting? And you want to get down Vernon's back. Vernon used to act, okay? Stage acting as well as screen acting for a little bit. Well, it was more class related, but and screenwriting and also
Mm,
other avenues of writing. So Vernon knows how to act. He might not act today, but still to this day, there's people who believe Vernon is a in the closet drag queen because something I did my freshman year. This one right here can do his thing,
yeah. And
hands
I
down.
will also put in my own little plug. I don't have a list of acting credentials, but I starred as Romeo in a parody of Romeo and Juliet in my senior year of high school, and
Hallelujah.
I got an award for it. So I don't claim to be a great actor. I left the stage, years ago. That's behind me now, but
Listen,
I can still carry that gravitas.
and I'm still being asked to go back into it, which I'm still debating. I just need to get my schedule right. Because right now it's crazy. But yeah, people have,
Yeah,
histories,
but yeah,
resumes.
but ultimately, just close this out, it's going to be very interesting to see, of course, what
Mhm.
happens with the whole nature of the court case. I think that, well, even if it gets to a court case, because I think the next thing that will have to be decided, and more than likely it'll come around July, maybe August, that, Perry's legal team is going to be expected to either answer with a kind of formal denial of all the allegations point by point,
Mhm.
or we're going to have a motion to like dismiss, arguing that, of course, the case lacks sufficient legal grounding. And so I think what we have to watch for is really like whether they attack Derek Dixon's credibility directly or
Mhm.
aim to get the case thrown out before discovery. If they file a motion to dismiss, it of course is going to delay proceedings while the court considers it. So that's really what we have to look forward to next. Just a
Yeah,
thing.
I kind of feel like it's going to be one of those things that's quietly settled because people's attention span just goes out the window, and we got way too much stuff going on in this dang country
Mm-hmm.
to focus on Tyler Perry drama 24/7. So what I
Yeah.
think is going to end up happening is that they're going to petition for dismissal, whatnot, um, in hopes that it takes a few months, or or either it goes to trial and they wait for however long it takes for that to happen, and then they're gonna reach a settlement as it approaches closer to that, like a nice happy medium to where people forgot about it. He settled on it, and it doesn't really break news like that. Now Derek is quiet, the thing is quiet, and people forgot that Tyler Perry was sued.
Mm,
That's where I think is going to happen with this.
mm. Well, we shall be in for the ride along with all everybody else who's listening and hearing that. So I think that's all we got for now, though.
Yeah, same. It's been a nice little long episode. So let me go ahead and lead into closing this out. So thank you all so much for tuning in to Melanin and Moonlight, your late night space for deep, thought-provoking conversations about sex, culture, and the well-being of the Black community. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep the vibes flowing and your mind open. Bye.
Bye.